Hey guys, and welcome to this week's small group. Now this week we're going to wrestle with the question, why would God care about my work? And the answer to that is that when we do good work, we participate in the beauty of God's creation. Now this week we're going to be interacting with Genesis chapter 1. But before we do, let's ask some questions just to break the ice. So the first two questions are, what do you hate the most about your work? And what do you love the most about your work? And the caveat to that is you must answer both of those. Now, you may not like the word hate. You could say, I dislike. But tell the group something that you like and something that you don't like, unless your boss is there. And then tell your boss that you just love them. So it's completely natural to like certain things and to dislike certain things about our work. But today what we're going to do is get a God-sized view of our work. You know, most of the time we look at Genesis to ask the questions of how God specifically did the whole creation thing. We impose our questions on passages that were never trying to answer those questions. Remember that Genesis chapter 1 was written to begin to answer the questions of the Israelites who were just released from Egyptian slavery. They had questions like, how is our God different from the Egyptian gods? If our God is our new master, then what exactly does he expect out of us? And after all these years of being slaves, what is work supposed to look like? So read Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 13 through the eyes of an Israelite who was just released from slavery. How might someone who doesn't believe in God view work differently from someone who does? And what do we learn about God as a worker from these passages? So a person who believes in God should view work completely differently from somebody who doesn't believe in God. But the problem is that more often than not, we as believers take on a pessimistic and torturous view of work just like everybody else. But the opening chapter of Genesis shows God as an exciting and creative worker. So up until this point, we have seen God make the containers for His creation in the passages that you've already read. He has created the concept of light in day 1. He has created the containers of sky and the sea in day 2. And He has created the container of land and vegetation in day 3. Now we're going to read how God fills each of those containers in days 4 through 6. And so what I want you to notice is how God fills the container of light in day 4. Fills the container of the land and the sea in day 5, and He fills the container of land on day 6. So what I want you to see is that day 1 corresponds with day 4. Day 2 corresponds with day 5. And day 3 corresponds with day 6. It'll make more sense when you begin to read Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 through 25. When we see how God orders the days of creation, what does this tell us about the character of God? And what does the order of the days of creation say about what God values when it comes to our work? So God is a God of order. Just as He brought chaos into order, our work should be to do the same. Even if your job is just to clean up after others. Let's say you're a bus person at a restaurant. You are bringing chaos into order. You are participating in the beauty of God's creation, whether you realize it or not. When God says, it is good, what do we learn about God? And what do we learn about goodness from these passages? There's a lot of things that we could say about God and goodness from those passages, but what I want you to see is that the very definition of what is good comes from God. He defines goodness because goodness flows from the character of God. God is also very interested in what's good for you and for me. So read Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 31. What is different about verse 31 in contrast with all the other times God finished a day? And what do you think, why do you think that this particular passage is different? And have you ever thought of your work as participating in the beauty of creation? Why or why not? Hopefully you discovered that in verse 31, God said it is very good. And does he mean that because he created humanity and humanity was very good? Or does he mean that because the creation was complete and it all worked together and he was seeing how the system worked together and he said, wow, that's very good? I don't know. In fact, biblical scholars continue to debate that question to this day. But regardless where you fall on that argument, God's creation is very good. You are created in God's very good image, and you have the opportunity to do very good things in your work. Think about the work that you do, and in what ways does your specific work provide good for others? If you're a doctor, how does your work provide good for others? If you're a waiter or a waitress, if you're a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter, how does your work provide good for others? And why do so many people view their work in such a negative way? Is it because of their boss? Or is it because of their work? Or is it because of something else? Next, I want you to answer these questions. What might be some of the positive consequences of seeing our work as participating in the beauty of God's creation? And what are some practical ways that you could do your work differently this week in the light of Genesis chapter 1? Next, I'm going to ask you to close in prayer. Ask God to change our perspective on our work and help us to be different this week at our places of work. Remember that when we do good work, we participate in the beauty of God's creation. So God bless you, God bless your small group, and God bless your work.